Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry, 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. Most were loyal. But no one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move. All of them. Citizens and aliens alike, all of them. All of them. All of them. All of them.
My father was always the problem. I was brought to my grandmother, my grandparents, unexpectedly. They were both home, fortunately. When Sumiko came to tell my grandparents that someone was here to see them, and so they went to the special area where it opened up. It's half the house was Japanese and half the house was sort of Western. Yeah. So we were in the Japanese receiving room. And my mother brought me in a blanket and said, "This is your granddaughter. I cannot keep her. Please, you have to look after her." And well, that was the first time they heard, because Hawaii was small, they heard rumors, but Tsuji hadn't been home, and he didn't announce anything. So all of a sudden, this young woman who was a child herself, and my mother started to cry, evidently, and said, "Please, you will look after her, yeah, because I can't." Mm-hmm. And then they realized that my mother was really badly beaten up. And so they said they would gladly take the child. And my grandfather, I guess, and my mother had more of a conference. So my Uncle Mac was called for, and my grandfather gave him instructions to help find a place for her secretly, away from Tsuji, because my mother literally thought he would kill her. And they thought that was resolved when, again, Roy was born. And this time my mother really had to leave. So my grandfather arranged through Uncle Mac for her to leave Hawaii and go to the mainland. And that's what she did. Mm-hmm. So I never had any, there was no pictures or no one talked about her. But it didn't seem strange because I had my grandfather and grandmother, and that was like having my parents. And all my needs were met. You know? And so life was pretty wonderful until World War II. And halfway into World War II, when my grandfather, so ill, passed away. But there was one incident I remember so vividly. Our property had all this huge wrought iron gate, and it surrounded the property, and in the front had this enormous gate with a bell on the top to announce if anyone came in. And that gate was locked at night. It was close, it was late afternoon, I think, when everyone was home. All of a sudden there was a shouting and mobs of people with kitchen knives and garden tools and God knows what else, hammers, whatever they had. And they came to kill the Japs. Yeah. And they started to get boisterous. And they were mobbing and trying to storm in. And my grandfather was quite ill. He was way in the back room, which they turned into like an infirmary with the oxygen tank and the whole thing. And he insisted on being brought to the front porch. And he looked out very calmly, and he slowly looked at the crowd. And he put his head down. And when he raised it, he said, with tears in his eyes, he said, "These were friends of mine, some of them out there. They were at our house and shared our food." He said, war makes people lose sight of any reasoning. No. My first Hakujin encounter was this Holly girl that came to our first year at school, Adeline. Blue-eyed, blonde, tall. I became immediate friends with her because we were the two tallest girls in class. We towered over the boys and the girls. And so we palled around for a short time. And I remember going to her house, and everything was sweetheart, and the kiss and the hugs. And I remember asking Obasan, "How come, do you love me?" And Obasan said, "Yes, why are you asking?" And I said, "Because you don't show that you love me." Adeline's parents, I said, when she comes home from school, they hug her and they kiss her and they tell her that they love her. I said, and for no reason, they turn around and tell her they love her and kiss her. Watson smiled. She said, "Oh, isn't that nice?" And I said, "Yeah." so does it mean you don't love me? And she said, we're Japanese, She said, we have different ways of showing how we love our children. So I said, how? And she said, you must see, you must hear, you will taste, and you would feel. Count my many ways in how I show you how I love you. Not a day goes by when I'm preparing a meal that I don't think about you and what you like, or even what you don't like. When I see something, even things like pressing my clothes for me. When my Aunt Sheila used to complain that I should do it, and Obasan would say, no, it's okay. I want people, when they see my granddaughter, to know that her clothes is crisp and clean, that someone cares about her. Yeah, that's love. That love is a lot of little things. But you don't realize that, and you start taking it for granted when you don't see, when you don't hear, and when you don't taste.